They say that at 35,000 feet, you are closer to heaven than anywhere else on Earth. But as I sat in that pressurized cockpit, I realized I was actually suspended in a void, waiting for the ground to rise up and swallow me whole. There is a particular frequency to an emergency channel, a sharp, jagged static that cuts through the hum of the twin engines, and when it chirped that Thursday morning, I felt a cold finger of dread trace the length of my spine. I was over Kansas, the world below a patchwork quilt of gold and green, completely unaware that the life I had spent nearly 3 decades building was about to be incinerated by a single phone call. My co-pilot, a younger man named Miller, shifted in his seat, his eyes darting to me with a silent question. An emergency patch-through to a commercial pilot mid-flight is the harbinger of a catastrophe. It means the world on the ground has stopped spinning, and you're the last one to know. I adjusted my headset, my palms suddenly slick against the yoke, and braced for the news of a funeral. I never imagined I would be the one being buried. "Richard, it's Mrs. Rodriguez from next door." The voice was thin, vibrating with a frantic energy that didn't match her 82 years. She sounded like she was hiding in a closet, her breath coming in shallow, jagged gasps. "Richard, I'm so sorry to use this line, but I couldn't live with myself if I waited until you landed. My conscience is screaming, and I think your heart is about to break." My mind immediately cataloged the people I loved. Karen, my kids, the grandkids. I felt the air thin out in my lungs. "Is Karen okay? Did something happen at the house?" "She's fine, Richard. Physically, she is perfect. But you need to look at your cameras." There was a heavy, suffocating pause on the line, the kind of silence that precedes a terminal diagnosis. "You need to look at the footage from Tuesday, and the Thursday before, and yesterday. Check the driveway, Richard. Look for the blue sedan." The world tilted, not because of turbulence, but because of the conviction in her voice. Have you ever felt the exact moment your reality fractures, leaving you standing on a piece of ice that's rapidly drifting away from the shore? I had been married to Karen for 27 years. We had survived the lean years of flight school, the diapers, the teenage rebellions, and the long, lonely stretches of my international routes. We were the solid couple, the ones people looked at when they wanted to believe that forever wasn't just a marketing slogan for greeting cards. "Mrs. Rodriguez, what are you talking about?" "A young man," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of the secret. "Athletic, blue Honda Civic. He arrives every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork, exactly at 2 in the afternoon. He stays for 3 hours, sometimes 4. He has a key, Richard. He doesn't knock. He just walks into your life while you're 30,000 feet in the air." I landed that aircraft on pure muscle memory. My brain had checked out somewhere over the Texas Panhandle, leaving my body to go through the checklists and radio protocols of a professional. When the wheels touched the tarmac in Phoenix, I didn't feel the usual relief of a successful flight. I felt like a man walking toward a guillotine. The moment I reached the crew lounge, I didn't check my flight logs or grab a coffee. I sat in a corner, my hands trembling, and opened the home security app on my phone. Karen had been the one to insist on the cameras. She'd talked about peace of mind after a few break-ins down the street. It was the ultimate irony. She had installed the very eyes that were about to witness her betrayal. I scrolled back to Tuesday. 1:58 p.m. A blue Honda Civic pulled into my driveway. A man stepped out. He looked to be in his late 20s, wearing gym clothes that clung to a physique I hadn't possessed in 20 years. He didn't hesitate. He walked to the front door, and it opened before his hand could even reach the handle. There was Karen. She was wearing a white sundress I had bought her for our silver anniversary. She looked radiant. She looked like a woman in love. When she kissed him, it wasn't the chaste, comfortable kiss of a long-term spouse. It was a hungry, desperate reclamation. They disappeared inside, and the front door clicked shut with a finality that made my stomach turn. I switched to the living room feed. I watched them on my couch, My couch, the one we had picked out together after 3 weeks of debating fabric swatches. I watched her pour him a glass of the Cabernet we had been saving for my 64th birthday. They were laughing, their body language intimate and synchronized. It was a ballet of betrayal. I checked the previous Thursday. Same car, same time, same kiss. I went back weeks, then months. It was a shadow life, a parallel universe where I didn't exist, and this stranger had taken my place. "Did you see it?" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice came through my phone again. She had stayed on the line, or perhaps she had called back. I didn't know. Time had become a fluid, distorted thing. "I saw it," I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from the bottom of a deep well. "I am so sorry, Richard. My husband, he had someone else for years. Everyone knew but me. They thought they were being kind by staying silent, but they were just helping him kill me slowly. I couldn't let that happen to you." I thanked her, though the words felt hollow. I checked into a hotel near the airport because I couldn't face the idea of a 4-hour commute back to a house that was no longer a home. I sat in the dark, the blue light of the phone screen illuminating the tears I didn't even know I was crying. Why does betrayal feel so much like a physical wound? It isn't just the heart that hurts. It's the bones, the skin, the very memory of every touch you thought was sacred. As I watched the footage for the 10th time, I noticed something new. They weren't just lounging. In one clip from 3 weeks ago, they were hunched over the kitchen island, studying documents, official-looking papers with gold seals. Karen was pointing at something, her face grim and determined. I zoomed in until the pixels screamed. There, at the top of the page, was a logo I recognized: Pacific Life Insurance Company. A cold, visceral terror replaced the heartache. I didn't wait for morning. I called my insurance agent, Tom, at his home. "Tom, it's Richard Morrison. I'm sorry to call so late. I was looking over some digital files and got confused. Did we make any changes to my policy recently?" There was a rustle of paper on the other end. "Oh, hey Richard, yeah, Karen handled that about 8 weeks ago. You doubled the death benefit, $4 million now. She said you were looking at some aggressive real estate investments and wanted the extra security. You don't remember signing the riders?" "Must have slipped my mind," I lied, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. $4 million. Right. Thanks, Tom. $4 million. I was worth more to her as a memory than as a husband. If you've ever felt like your gut was trying to tell you something you weren't ready to hear, leave a comment below. Your story might be the warning someone else needs to hear. I realized then that I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife. I was dealing with a predator. The next morning, I was in the office of Michael Chen, my attorney and one of my oldest friends. I laid it all out: the footage, the insurance, the secret visits. Michael's expression shifted from sympathy to professional alarm as he pulled up my legal file. "Richard," he said, his voice dropping an octave, "your will was updated 6 months ago. According to this document, the trust for your children has been dissolved. If you pass away, the entire estate, the house, the 401k, the $4 million policy, goes directly to Karen. No oversight. No delays." "I didn't sign that, Michael." He held a magnifying glass over the signature. "It's a masterpiece. It looks exactly like your hand. But if you look at the R in Richard, you always loop the top. This one is sharp. This is a forgery, Richard. And these are felonies. Multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy." "She's planning to kill me," I said. Saying the words out loud made the air in the room feel heavy, like the atmosphere before a massive storm. "We go to the police right now," Michael said, reaching for his desk phone. "No," I stopped him. "If we go now, she'll hire a high-priced lawyer and claim it was a misunderstanding. She'll say she was planning a surprise or that she forged the signature to save me the hassle. I need her to incriminate herself. I need her to think she's winning until the very second the trap snaps shut. I hired Sarah Chen, a private investigator who looked more like a librarian than a former federal agent. Within 48 hours, she had the dossier on the man in the blue sedan. His name was Jason Mercer. He was 29 years old, a personal trainer at the high-end gym Karen had joined a year ago. He was also a man drowning in a sea of red ink, maxed-out credit cards, a looming eviction, and a gambling habit that made his modest salary look like pocket change. He wasn't just a lover, he was a desperate man looking for a payday. "They're a dangerous combination," Sarah warned me as we sat in a nondescript sedan outside the gym. "She has the coldness to plan it, and he has the desperation to execute it. Have you noticed anything strange at home? Any new habits?" "I've noticed everything," I whispered. "I'm a pilot, Sarah. I'm trained to spot the smallest deviation in a flight path. She's too nice. She's too attentive. She's acting like the woman I married 20 years ago, and it makes my skin crawl because I know it's a performance for an audience of one." I went home that night and performed my own role. I let her kiss me. I let her cook me dinner. I sat across from her and listened to her talk about her day, all while knowing that she had been in the arms of a man half her age just 48 hours prior. It is a strange, agonizing thing to look at the person you love and see a tombstone instead of a reflection. I waited for her to go to her book club, and then I went to the home computer. She had cleared her browser history, but she had forgotten one thing: the synced drafts in her email account. I found a message addressed to a burner account. The subject line was blank. The content was a death warrant. December 15th. The Cessna 172 rental is confirmed. It's a solo flight for his birthday. You've studied the manual. The fuel line needs to be compromised in a way that looks like a slow vibration leak. He'll be over the mountains. No witnesses. I'll be the grieving widow, and you'll be the man who helps me find my smile again. We're almost there, baby. December 15th. My birthday. I had mentioned weeks ago that I wanted to take a small plane up for a solo run, just to feel the wind in a way you can't in a commercial jet. She had encouraged it. She had even offered to pay for the rental. She wasn't just planning my death, she was planning to use my passion as the weapon. I didn't panic. I called Sarah and Michael. "The date is set," I told them. "We have 3 weeks. I want the FBI involved. I want this to be so ironclad that she never sees the sun from outside a prison yard again." The next 21 days were a descent into a private hell. Every "I love you," she whispered, felt like a lash across my back. Every time she touched my arm, I had to suppress the urge to recoil. Does desire whisper louder than guilt? For Karen, it seemed the guilt didn't even have a voice. She was radiant, she was excited. She even bought me a new flight jacket for my birthday. I wore it, smiling for the family photos she insisted on taking, knowing they were meant to be the last images of a doomed man. The FBI took the threat with a clinical seriousness that I found comforting. They rigged the Cessna with high-definition hidden cameras, micro lenses that Jason would never find. They placed a tracker on his car and tapped Karen's phone. We watched on the surveillance feed as Jason broke into the hangar at 3 a.m. on the morning of the 15th. He was wearing a hoodie, but the cameras caught his face clearly as he worked. He was efficient. He knew exactly where the fuel line was. He loosened the fitting just enough so that it would hold for takeoff but vibrate loose under the pressure of a climb. He was making a coffin out of aluminum and glass. At 6 a.m., I stood in the kitchen of my home. Karen was in her bathrobe, her hair messy in that way I used to find endearing. She handed me a travel mug of coffee. "Have a wonderful flight, honey. Happy birthday. I'll have a special dinner waiting when you get back." I looked her in the eye. I wanted to see a flicker of hesitation, a momentary lapse in her resolve. There was nothing but a terrifying, polished warmth. "I love you, Karen," I said, testing the weight of the lie. "I love you more," she replied. I walked out the door, and as soon as I was around the corner, I stepped into a waiting black SUV. An FBI pilot took my place, wearing my jacket and a helmet that obscured his face. He took off exactly on schedule. 10 minutes later, over a remote stretch of forest, he radioed in a fuel emergency and performed a controlled emergency landing on a pre-secured fire road. To the world, and to anyone listening to the scanners, I had disappeared. I sat in the back of a surveillance van, a headset clamped over my ears. We were monitoring Karen's phone. The call from the flight center came at 8:45 a.m. "Mrs. Morrison, this is Flight Services. We have a reported emergency involving your husband's tail number. The plane has dropped off radar. We're initiating a search and rescue." I heard her gasp. I heard the phone hit the floor. I heard her sob. Great, racking sounds of grief that would have broken my heart if I hadn't seen her emails. And then, exactly 60 seconds later, the sobbing stopped. I heard the click of her picking the phone back up. She dialed a number she knew by heart. "Jason, it's done. The bird is down. They think it's an accident. I'm going to wait an hour, then I'll go to the airport and play the part. We did it. Oh my God, we actually did it." Her voice wasn't shaky. It was triumphant. It was the sound of a woman who had just won the lottery. "I'm coming over," Jason said. "We need to celebrate." "No, stay put," she commanded. "We have to be smart. Give me 3 days. Once the wreckage is found, we'll start the paperwork. 4 million, Jason. We're never going to worry about money again." I felt a part of my soul wither and die in that van. A 27-year shared life can be a long-form lie, and I was looking at the wreckage of mine. But the story wasn't over. Mrs. Rodriguez, my 82-year-old guardian angel, called my cell phone. The FBI let me answer. "Richard, she's leaving. She's not going to the airport. She's heading toward that man's apartment. She has a bottle of champagne in her hand. I can see it through the window." "She's getting sloppy," Sarah whispered from the seat next to me. "The adrenaline has made her feel invincible." "Let's go," I said. We pulled up to Jason's apartment complex 40 minutes later. The FBI agents moved with a silent, lethal grace surrounding the perimeter. I walked into the lobby, my heart beating with a cold, rhythmic precision. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like the personification of a debt that was coming due. I stood outside apartment 3C and listened. I could hear music. I could hear the pop of a cork. I could hear her laughter, the same laugh that had been the soundtrack to my happiest memories. I knocked. The music didn't stop, but the laughter did. I heard footsteps. The door swung open, and Jason stood there, shirtless, a grin on his face that vanished so fast it looked like his features had been erased. He turned a shade of gray that I didn't know the human skin could achieve. Richard," he stammered. I pushed past him. Karen was on the sofa, her feet up on the coffee table. She was holding a crystal flute filled with bubbling wine. When she saw me, her hand began to shake so violently that the glass shattered against the floor. Red wine. It wasn't champagne. She'd gone for the expensive stuff, spread across the carpet like a fresh wound. "You look like you've seen a ghost," I said, my voice as calm as a flight path in clear weather. "Though I suppose, according to your plan, I should be at the bottom of a mountain right now." "Richard, It's not what it looks like," she began, the old reflexes kicking in. She stood up, her face a mask of terror and calculation. "I was kidnapped. He forced me." "Stop," I said, and the word cut through her lie like a blade. I pulled out my phone and pressed play on the recording from the van. Her own voice filled the room, celebrating my death, talking about the insurance money, calling this man baby. The silence that followed was absolute. Jason tried to bolt for the door, but he didn't even make it to the hallway before 2 federal agents had him pinned to the floor. Karen sank back onto the sofa, her eyes fixed on the broken glass at her feet. She looked small. She looked pathetic. "Why?" I asked. It was the only question left. "If you wanted out, you could have just asked for a divorce. I would have given you half of everything. We could have walked away with our dignity." She looked up at me, and for the first time in 27 years, I saw the real woman. The vanity, the greed, the utter lack of empathy. Half wasn't enough, she hissed. I didn't want a divorce, Richard. I wanted a payday. I wanted to be young again, and you were just a reminder of how old I was getting. You were always gone, flying your planes, leaving me in that big, empty house. I figured you owed me. I owed you my life? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The FBI agents moved in, and as the handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists, I realized that the woman I had loved never actually existed. She was a projection, a character she had played until the role no longer suited her. The trial was a media circus. The Black Widow of the Skies, the headlines called her. Jason Mercer took a plea deal, testifying against her in exchange for a 15-year sentence. He told the jury everything: how she had seduced him, how she had researched the engine mechanics, how she had forged my name on the insurance documents while I was sleeping in the next room. Karen didn't show any remorse. She sat at the defense table with a cold, detached expression, as if she were a spectator at a play she found slightly boring. She was sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. My children were devastated, caught in a hurricane of grief and confusion. Our daughter didn't speak to me for months, her mind unable to reconcile the mother who had tucked her in at night with the woman who had tried to turn her father into a charred remains in a forest. It took time and a lot of therapy for us to become a family again. I sold the house. I couldn't stand the way the light hit the kitchen island where they had planned my murder. I moved to a quiet condo near the water, took early retirement, and started a new life. I still see Mrs. Rodriguez every Sunday. We have coffee, and we talk about the world. She's the one who taught me that even in the darkest moments, there are people who will stand up for the truth. Greed doesn't just blind people, it turns them into predators. I learned that the hard way, but I also learned that I am more resilient than I ever imagined. The most dangerous monsters don't hide under the bed. They share it, but they can be defeated if you have the courage to look at the evidence. If this story reminded you to never ignore your intuition, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served. I am 63 years old now, and for the first time in my life, I'm not looking at the clouds from a cockpit. I'm looking at the horizon, and I'm finally at peace. I survived the person who was supposed to love me most, and that is a victory no amount of insurance money could ever buy.